Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
The year is 2016, the place Florida, USA. Austin Harrouff, for all purposes, seemed a kind, well-liked boy. 19 years old, coming shortly up to 20. Austin was 6 feet tall, built like a true athlete. Competing in American football, wrestling, but also was a committed student. You could say Austin was a normal, average American boy, but life started to go wrong for Austin at the beginning of August 2016. Now, what some around Austin didn't know, Austin was insecure. He took up bodybuilding, really getting in good shape, to try and overcome these insecurities. He'd actually written in his own journal, he wanted to stop being so shy, be more assertive, more outgoing, as he didn't believe people really accepted him for who he was. But that wasn't enough to put Austin's insecurities to bed. He went down the drug route too. Substance abuse. Moving away from alcohol, then onto marijuana, he moved on to Vyvanse, a stimulant for people with attention deficit disorder. ADD is a type of ADHD, often put under the same umbrella. Going deeper into hallucinogenics, mushrooms and acid, and even MDMA. And who knows what he may or may not have been taking. All these insecurities, the doubts, the drug use, and the alcohol all seem to take a toll on the happy boy, Austin Harrouff. Before reaching the peak of this harrowing case, Austin really started to show signs of mental illness. Or could it have been something else? His computer search history had results such as, do I need sleep? I think I'm going crazy. How do you know if you're going crazy? Austin was struggling bad. He moved his bed downstairs into the garage of his family home, claiming that the house was full of demons. Through the night, he wasn't sleeping. No. He was patrolling the house every 2 hours, knocking on his family members' doors, claiming that he was guarding them from the demons in the house. Clearly red flag behaviour. They all started to lock their bedroom doors. Then they all put their heads together and come up with, surely this must be drug use. So they confronted Austin, and he didn't deny it. No, he admitted it. He admitted to taking many drugs. Problem solved, right? Not at all. By the end of the summer, Austin had stated he was clean, but nothing had changed for the better, so his family pursued the initiation of the Baker Act, which applies to those that are living in Florida that are showing severe signs of mental illness. Then they can be detained for up to 72 hours. Within these 72 hours, professionals will fully analyse and assess them, but it was sadly too late. The morning of August the 15th, Austin turns up at an old school friend's house unannounced. He knocks on his door. This school friend answers, and Austin simply asks, what year was I born? His friend, baffled by this random encounter with Austin, bemused, simply replied, 1996. Austin did no more than turn around and walk off. The friend clearly knew something was wrong here and thought that he would call him up and manage to convince Austin to hang out with him for the day. They planned to go to the beach that day and meet up with another group, and one of those of that group was Austin's sister Haley. On the way, Austin said, I'll catch up with you in a moment, and he shot off to go and get something. He then returned to the beach in a change of clothes. You got to bear in mind, it was hot outside. This is Florida. His outfit was a thick football jersey, sweatpants, 2 watches and some shades. The group found it funny and they started to dish out banter like many of us would. Austin didn't share the same response as his friends. He was a bit reserved, quiet to begin with. But then, in an outburst, he shouted, if you tell me I'm crazy, I'll kill you. Everybody is startled. Moments later, Haley, Austin's sister, goes to calm him down, successfully. Austin appears himself again, but then reveals to Haley that he's actually half horse and immortal. Obviously, if your sibling come up to you and said this after everything that's been going on with them, the lack of sleep, the night patrols, the lashing out, the odd clothing, the drugs, and the social media posts that were weird, it's going to trouble you, and it did trouble Haley. She said, you need some professional help or something, and Austin agreed. They stayed on the beach for another few hours, and then 3 of them left. Austin, his sister Haley, and Austin's friend, the one that he visited in the morning. These 3 were set to have dinner at Duffy's with Wade, Austin and Haley's dad, and Wade's girlfriend. Upon making their way to the diner, Austin stopped Haley and stated that he wanted to test out his immortality. He then just turns and walks into the road, just straight up, casually strolls into traffic. Luckily, the other 2 were able to pull him back. What would they do with him? It's a bizarre and freakish thing to do. Well, they carried on to Duffy's Diner on Indiantown Road, meeting Wade and his partner there. They entered around 1946, being sat down a couple of minutes later. Austin in a black top and wearing a visor on his head. According to his dad, Austin was quieter than usual. However, he did go on to order a chili, brushing off suspicions that anything was wrong. He went on to get up and excusing himself to go to the bathroom. But he didn't go to the bathroom. In fact, he diverted back to the exit and walked outside for some unknown reason, returning 1 minute later. 10 minutes later, Austin once again gets up, just heads straight for the exit. Once again, no reason, just heads to his mum's, around 2 miles away. His mum, Mina, was surprised to see him, especially how strange he was acting. Strange is an understatement. As he went on to grab a bottle of cooking oil and just started drinking it. Just straight up chugging it. His mum was shouting something like, "Stop, Austin, stop," as she managed to pry away the cooking oil from him. Then he would just proceed to take a bowl, fill it with Parmesan cheese, and devour that instead. Mina called Wade, Austin's dad, and told him how Austin was acting uncharacteristically to their son's usual behaviour. Before getting in the car, Austin in tow, and driving back to Duffy's Diner. Now dropped off at the diner in a fresh set of clothes. Red cap, blue top, white shorts. Austin sat back down and his dad Wade thought enough is enough. He didn't like seeing his son like this. So he grabbed Wade and questioned, "What is wrong with you?" And Austin replied by slamming his father in the face. This wasn't the Austin that his father, his sister and everyone else at the table knew. Austin was always laid back. He never showed an aggressive side. He was a lovable son, brother and friend to many. He looked embarrassed for lashing out at his dad. He stood up, scanned the faces at the table, and stormed out. Austin Dad's partner phoned the police to report the situation. North of here on Kokomo Lane, Michelle Mishcon was sat alone in her own little paradise that her and her partner, John Stevens, had set up for themselves in their garage. She was watching TV. Often it would be both of them, but John was out walking the dog. Often with the door open, lounging back, maybe with a drink or whatever. Known to do this, John and Michelle would often do this, chatting to neighbours, passers-by. They were a nice, sociable married couple. They had 3 kids from former marriages and were now happily retired. Over the road, Michelle's neighbour, Jeff Fisher, he heard screaming. Jeff had already settled for the night, but he jumped into action. What would transpire would haunt the most hardened of souls. Jeff ran out to see over the road a man slamming the car door when Michelle stood there in her garage, absolutely petrified. Stood rooted to the spot in her garage, screaming at this guy. The man was Austin Harrouff. Jeff ran across the road to assist Michelle, pumped up, doing the right thing. But before he got to her, Austin was already on top of her like a crazed maniac, pummeling her repeatedly on her garage floor. Austin hears Jeff coming, turns around in an instant and threatens him, shouting, "You don't want no part of this." Jeff, still putting himself in danger, still tried his best to help Michelle. Austin whacked Jeff with his right hand over his head. Despite the blow, Jeff grabbed him and threw him hard, face first, to the ground. Looking around thinking, surely this guy won't get up. Austin rose back to his feet. And during this, Jeff felt a searing pain shoot up his side, his neck, his back and his head. Jeff didn't know at the time, but Austin hadn't punched him. He had slashed him with a knife. 5 different injuries, all from that wide swing, were left on Jeff's body. In a split-second decision, Jeff ran through John and Michelle's house, bashing his way through, expecting Austin to follow him. He managed to get across the street, through his door, slams it shut, locks it quick, and calls 911.
Beating up a woman across the street.
Are either of them injured? Can you tell from where you are?
Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Can you tell if she's conscious?
No, it does not appear so, no.
Jeff's lost a lot of blood now, and is barely conscious. All he can hear now is loud screaming and some awful beast-like noises from over the road. In comes the deputies. The first one on the scene was a female officer. We'll call her Beth. Soon after, a male officer arrives, parks up behind Beth's car. We'll call him Brad. Beth has already run ahead up the drive, gun drawn, and her face speaks volumes. Deputy Brad follows suit, and his account states that running down the driveway was a huge flow of blood, 6 foot wide. He couldn't see at this point what had actually caused the excessive amount of blood. John and Michelle's vehicles were blocking his line of sight. Brad comes flying down the left side of the two cars behind Beth. In front of his very eyes was a disturbing sight. A man, John Stevens, who must have returned from his dog walk to see all the commotion with his wife Michelle. He was laid out on the concrete staring up at the officers, trying to gasp out the words, "Please help me." On top of John was Austin. You've got to remember, Austin was a wrestler, a strong athletic guy. He had his left arm around John's neck with his right arm out of view yanking on something. Beth in that moment couldn't take the shot as John was at risk of being shot too. So Brad took out his taser gun, aimed it up at Austin, and before he fired, Brad saw what this aggressive, incoherent guy was doing with his right hand. He had it hooked right into John's cheek, pulling, yanking, tearing at the helpless John's face, biting the flesh away chunks at a time, swallowing this human flesh like it was some sort of feral animal on top of his prey. This wasn't the first bite. No, there was chunks out of John's face all over. Brad fired his taser straight into Austin's back, but it had no effect. He was like a man possessed, solely focused on his victim. Brad boots Austin square in the face, knocking him back. Austin does no more than get up, lunge straight back at John's shredded face again. All he wants to do right now is eat this poor guy's face. Bam! Officer Brad kicks him in the face yet again. Same outcome. Brad keeps striking over and over. Thankfully now another couple of officers and a canine were on scene. The canine came bounding in, latches onto Austin's arm, but Austin just rips his arm straight out of the jaws of the dog, lacerating his skin, but he was unfazed. The dog grabs him again, and Austin pulls free again. Third and final time the dog repeats, and at the same time Brad kicks Austin as hard as he can, once again knocking him down. Brad threw himself straight onto Austin's blood-covered face, whipped one handcuff out in a flash, and got Austin's wrist. He then drags him away from John's still body and tries to get the second cuff on. Austin's flailing about now and he screams, "Kill me! I'm eating humans! Kill me!" Backup ran in to help. They finally managed to restrain their perp. They can now assess the full severity of the crime scene. Michelle was found sadly in a garage deceased. She had succumbed to blunt force trauma. John had tragically passed too. The face cannibalism, the stabbings, the beatings, it was all too much. John and Michelle had been robbed of life in a sick, random attack. Now it isn't over. Austin laid on the ground, cuffed and unresponsive. The absolute polar opposite to the happy boy that he was dubbed by his father. Police took him to hospital where he'd actually end up in an 11-day coma. It turns out that Austin had actually drunk some sort of chemicals out of Michelle and John's garage, and that had caused organ failure. Wade actually went on to reveal that he had a burnt esophagus and stomach. He did, however, go on to make a full physical recovery. What caused this drastic, disgusting turn? Everyone assumed drugs afterwards, but his toxicology report came back pretty much clear. It had traces of THC, which is in marijuana. Austin had a different reason. He revealed to police, once he stormed out of Duffy's diner for that final time, he claims he saw a shadowy figure. Feeling this was evil, he legged it, running 4 miles. Austin saw this brightly lit garage and headed towards it, for what he states was for help. Michelle screamed. Austin said he thought she was a witch and proceeded to viciously attack her. After that, Austin then proceeded to drink the chemicals which he allegedly claims he thought was alcohol, before seeing a figure in the doorway of the garage with a dog. That's when he claims his mind went blank. Obviously his story is patchy and straight up strange. People didn't believe a word of it. However, a top psychologist named Philip Resnick begged to differ. He went on to explain that Austin not responding to the constant kicks, the dog bites and the taser shot, but instead just wanting to devour his victim. These were real signs of a mental disorder. He wrote up a 38-page report explaining his findings. Clinical lycanthropy. That was his diagnosis. Lycanthropy is when you believe you're a dog-like or sometimes even werewolf-type creature, where you believe you actually transform into this beast. There was times in the build-up to all this that supported this, when Austin told his sister or his friends that he was actually half horse or half dog. His dad talked on TV about his son and stated that on the day he believed that Austin was severely dehydrated, ticking another box of yet another negative thing affecting Austin. Austin had a video call interview with the famous TV host Dr. Phil, and in it he seemed remorseful. He explains what he believes happened to him. The pictures of Austin over the years, during and after, are startling. The contrast, the difference between them. So a judge ruled on Monday the 22nd of November 2022 that Austin Harrouff was not guilty by reason of insanity and ordered him to be admitted into a secure mental health facility. He will not go to prison.